We got lots of different kinds of wrist wraps. We'll talk about the two main differences we see, different sizes, and when and why you should use them. So these are, I have mine here. These are my favorite kind, right? They're elastic. Well, let's just, first of all, they're elastic and they're Velcro, right? And they have a strap for my thumb. That's one kind. Here's the other kind, which is just a cloth. There's no elasticity in it. And this is for tucking in at the end. And we'll go through kind of a little bit how to use them. But in one of the videos I watched that Jordan sent me, I think it was a really good point. A lot of times you see people wear wrist wraps as just some sort of like bracelet, right? Like there's a gap between the hand and the wrist. It's just adding some compression down here. The idea is that it is providing some support on the bottom part of that palm, so I get some sort of support within my wrist flexion and extension. So the reason I like my my Rogue wrist wrap, well, Chic makes them, right? Rogue makes them. I mean, there's probably one or two companies that make them. Everybody just throws their label on them. But starting off with these wrist wraps, I just put my thumb in here. Let me take this off first. Thumb goes in, and I like to pull these tight, but you're just pulling around, and you're hitting part of your wrist, or your hand, you know? What I mean by wearing it as a bracelet is I don't want to set this thing down here. I'm really not doing anything for myself. So I sit that thing a little higher. I'll pull tight here, and just strap it over, and then I always pop this off. You don't really need that, and I'll tuck it. But now I'll constantly kind of spin them to keep them tight, and then push them up if I'm training. All right. When you need them, I think front squatting, anything overhead, anything Olympic lifting, right? We have tons of wrist issues with people who want to do, especially start snatching and doing wrist overhead squats, right? Because I'm out here and I get this radial deviation of the wrist with no support and heavy loads. If I'm not catching that right, I'll really start to beat up my wrists. Jeff, I was talking with you, I think, about the ganglion cyst. That's what I was trying to remember, right? So this is something important to note too. Ganglion cysts are benign cysts. They don't grow or spread anywhere. It's essentially when a joint leaks out fluid and the surrounding area creates a little sac, and so it's just a cyst. But gymnasts get them a lot. You can get them a lot if you're not protecting your wrist or you're overworking your wrist a little bit. So it's something to work out for. I see it not just in wrists, but in hands. People get really soft spots in their hands, and it just feels like a little bit of a bubble. Treatment, oftentimes they'll go away. I found one, I don't recommend this at all, but I thought this was interesting. It's also known as a Bible bump. Like years ago, they used to take a big heavy book, normally a Bible, and like smash it on your hand and try to pop it. Don't do that, but I just thought it was an interesting way to treat it. But treatment, if it is becoming big and obnoxious, you probably have to go to a doctor, either surgically remove it or drain it. But I don't think about anybody had to go get one drained or removed, but I do have people that have started having them show up, and I've had a couple in my hands before. I've just kind of massaged them, and they've kind of gone away with time. But heading off at the pass, some wrist support can be helpful. All right. When to use them, when not to use them. Like I said, front squatting, overhead squatting, Olympic lifts. If you feel strain on the wrist, absolutely. I don't want it to be used though as, for instance, if I'm front squatting and I don't yet have the mobility to stay high, and I'm dropping my elbows consistently, this doesn't just take place of that. You're still going to tear your wrist up until we get that mobility. We'll still need to modify that movement a little bit. It can help support, right? But it's not a replacement of anything. It doesn't fix anything. It just kind of helps. Moving on to these guys, I'll be honest with you, I never use these. But if you want to try them out, you're just going to start with the wrist, wrapping it here, hold it against yourself. This isn't going to feel as tight when you initially put it on, but you just wrap it over itself. It's going to be kind of loose when it first goes on. And then different people have this tied in through differently. But then you got to kind of spin it yourself to create the tension, right? And the reason I don't like this is I can't get this nearly as tight as I can get the elastic and the Velcro. But some people do like it, right? It is a little lighter, I think. So that's one way to play with that. You can spin them to tighten them. There you go. That just got tight. That just got a lot tighter right there. So you just kind of wrap that down, turn that tight, pull this tight. I got a lot more support there than I normally did. But don't just put them on loose, or again, you're just wearing a bracelet more than anything. Cool. I think that was it on the wrist wraps. Any quick questions on that? Any topics you want me to hit that I didn't? Cool. All right, different sizes, right? 12 inch, I've seen 12, 14, 16, 18, 24. Bigger, thicker wrists. I know that bigger powerlifting guys will use the heavy, thick ones so they can wrap around 3 or 4 times to really get that support. Some people will go super tense, right? Lock down the forearm while they wrap it, and sometimes that'll even play with your grip. You'll be able to feel, like that power lifter who did the video I watched. He talked about how he would tighten everything down before he went to bench heavy, have somebody else lock that down, and he'd have a hard time opening his hand sometimes. It's because his hand wants to be in that position where he locked it in with the wrist wraps. Now, we don't need to go that severe. That's when he's benching several hundred pounds. But if you add a little bit of tension as you lock it down, you can help improve that grip a little bit too. Just something to play with. I would just play with all this before you figure out exactly how you want to do it. But you see, obviously, short ones, right? Skinny wrists, you'd be fine with that. These are mine. I think these are the 18. I never got the 24s are pretty darn long. You're wrapping it around several times. These are 24s? Okay.
No, the black rope.
These are 24? Yeah, that makes sense. So mine are 18. These are 24. So yeah, that's pretty long. But you can try them all on, see which one you like. Those are 3 sizes right there.
When you use super heavy, you should have to unwrap them in between because it's that tight.
Yeah.
You almost have it on, and you can only keep it on for maybe 2 lifts, and then you have to undo it.
Yeah, that is a good point. If you're going to lock that down the way like we're talking about, like benching heavy or lifting heavy, it's not something you keep on the entire time. Right? It's almost like a belt, which we'll get into. It's locked down tight for a lift or a movement, and then you take it down. If you're looking for general support, if you're doing something like a Grace with multiple clean and jerks, that's not going to be that tight. It'll just be nice and snug.